Welcome the anointed ones. What heaven owes, it always pays, with interest that no bank on earth could ever match. Chosen ones, lean in because this is not just another pep talk. It's a prophecy unfolding in real time. Did you know that in ancient civilizations, kings often kept detailed records of losses suffered by their people, and when justice finally came, repayment was always double? Now imagine the King of Kings doing the same thing with your life. Every heartbreak, every betrayal, every opportunity stolen from you, none of it disappeared into thin air. It was logged, itemized, and preserved in heaven's books. And here's where it gets suspenseful. When God decides it's repayment season, it doesn't look like a refund counter at the grocery store. Oh no, it's more like heaven saying, I saw what they did, I saw what you lost, and now I'm about to shake the scoreboard. You thought the story ended with your loss, but what if your loss was only the introduction to heaven's repayment plot twist? Let's be honest. Some of you survived so much that even Hollywood wouldn't believe your script. You've had people write you off, laugh at you, whisper your failures like gossip was a full-time job. But here's the part that will make you smile. When God repays you, He doesn't just balance the equation. He makes it unfair, in your favor. The same folks who calculated your losses will need a calculator just to count your blessings. So buckle up, because in this message we're diving into why your losses were never wasted, why heaven kept receipts on your pain, and why the next chapter of your life is repayment on a scale that's going to shock not just your enemies, but even you. Number 1. Heaven's repayment does not mirror Earth's currency. Heaven's repayment is not shaped by the same system we see around us. On Earth, when people lose something, the only thought is to replace it with something similar. Lose money, get money back. Lose a job, find another one. Lose a relationship, seek someone new. But God's repayment system doesn't operate like an exchange counter where you hand in a ticket for a refund. What He gives back is often something completely different. And that difference is what makes it divine. Your losses may have been financial, emotional, or relational, but God doesn't limit Himself to paying you back in the same currency. He understands the root of what you truly lost, and repayment comes in ways that carry weight beyond the material. A stolen opportunity might be repaid with wisdom that ensures you'll never be manipulated again. A betrayal might be repaid with the kind of discernment that protects you for life. A season of rejection might be repaid with favor so undeniable that people who never noticed you before will suddenly seek you out. Heaven does not just restore, it transforms. This is why many chosen ones go through confusion when their lives turn after heavy loss. They expect God to replace like for like, but instead He shifts the entire equation. What you thought you needed back was only the surface layer. God saw deeper. He saw the hidden damage, the unseen cracks, the parts of you that couldn't be healed by getting the same thing returned. So He arranges repayment in forms you didn't even know you needed. It also explains why your repayment doesn't always make sense to outsiders. People might look at your life and wonder, how did they go through all of that and still end up with more? It won't add up by earthly math because God's repayment doesn't balance the books. It breaks them wide open. That's why His repayment carries permanence. What He gives can't be taken back by human hands because it wasn't given by them in the first place. So when heaven repays you, don't expect a copy of what was lost. Expect something greater, heavier, and more enduring. It won't just fill the gap. It will redefine what fullness means. Heaven never refunds, it reinvents. Number 2. Your suffering was an investment, not an accident. The suffering you went through was never random or wasted energy. It was an investment. Most people see their pain as meaningless, as if life just handed them a bad card and that's it. But when you are chosen, your losses don't evaporate into thin air. They are deposits stored in a spiritual account that only God manages. Every heartbreak, every sleepless night, every moment you kept going when quitting felt easier. None of it disappeared. It was all recorded, not just as memories but as value waiting to mature. Think about how investments work. You put something in, and it looks like you've lost access to it for a while. You don't see immediate results, and sometimes you even feel poorer because what you gave up isn't in your hands anymore. But over time, in silence, it grows. The suffering you endured functioned in the same way. While others saw only the loss, heaven calculated the endurance, the strength, and the faith that was being built inside you. That's why when repayment comes, it isn't small or proportional. It multiplies because suffering compounds value over time. This is also why the chosen ones often have a different glow, a deeper authority, and an unshakable calm about them. You can't fake what suffering deposits into your spirit. Trials stretch you, but they also add a richness to your character that no shortcut can create. That richness is why heaven's repayment has to be multiplied. It has to match the level of endurance you showed. Repayment isn't just about balancing what was lost. It's about honoring what the suffering produced in you. Many people want blessings without scars, but scars are receipts. They prove the investment was made. They prove you paid a price others didn't. And in God's economy, that price guarantees a return. You didn't suffer just to suffer. You suffered to build equity in heaven's system. And that equity is what unlocks a harvest greater than what was taken from you. So the next time you think back on your pain, don't see wasted years or empty nights. See deposits that are now due for withdrawal. God does not forget investments made in faith. He pays them back with dividends that no loss can compete with. Your suffering was never a setback. It was a setup for multiplied return. Number 3. Loss exposed what couldn't be carried forward. Everything you lost was not strong enough to survive the weight of where God was taking you. That's a hard truth, but it's also a liberating one. Many of the people, opportunities, and possessions you tried to hold on to could not have endured the pressures that your destiny requires. They seemed valuable at the time, but value is tested by longevity. What falls away too easily was never designed to last. God allowed certain losses not because He wanted you empty, but because He needed to protect the structure of your future. Chosen ones often wrestle with the question of why certain doors closed so violently or why people they trusted walked away without warning. The answer lies in destiny's demand. Some relationships, no matter how comfortable they felt, carried hidden fractures. Some jobs or opportunities looked good on the surface, but would have kept you locked in smallness, preventing you from stepping into your greater purpose. Loss exposed what could not be carried forward. It stripped away the weight that would have slowed your rise. This is why chosen ones often find that what left them was also what would have limited them. A friendship that ended saved you from years of quiet sabotage. A career you lost freed you from ceilings you couldn't see at the time. A resource that dried up forced you to discover provision at higher levels. The losses weren't random. They were surgical removals, precise extractions of what could not hold up under the gravity of where you're headed. And as painful as those moments were, they were also proof that God was editing your journey. You didn't see it at first because loss feels like emptiness, but in reality, it was redirection. Heaven does not allow the fragile to follow you into the eternal. What was meant for your next season is still intact, preserved, and prepared for you. What wasn't meant to last was removed so it couldn't collapse under the pressure of your calling. So the losses you mourned were not signs of weakness in you. They were signs of weakness in what left. It wasn't that you weren't worthy of holding it. It was that it wasn't worthy of carrying you. That's why your future can stand, because nothing flimsy is left attached to it. Number 4. Your repayment is calculated by what the loss cost. Heaven, not just you. Your repayment is measured by far more than what you personally lost. Loss is never just a private matter when you are chosen. Every tear you shed, every betrayal you endured, every opportunity denied to you, and every door slammed in your face was not only a disruption in your life, it created a ripple in the spiritual realm. Heaven keeps an account of more than the immediate pain. It tracks the imbalance your suffering caused in the flow of divine purpose on earth. That's why God's repayment is never only about replacing what was taken. It's about restoring order where chaos was allowed to interfere with destiny. When someone betrays you, it doesn't just hurt your heart, it creates openings for spiritual misalignment. When doors close on you unfairly, it interrupts the plans that were meant to move through you to bless others. Your life is connected to a network of purpose that extends beyond your immediate vision. That means your repayment must cover what was lost to you personally and what was lost to the broader design God is orchestrating. The scale of heaven's repayment is proportional not only to the severity of the personal blow, but also to the magnitude of what the world missed while you were delayed. This explains why chosen ones often experience repayment that seems overwhelmingly larger than the original loss. The restoration doesn't simply fill the void, it rebalances the universe in ways that honor divine justice. What comes back to you may arrive as opportunities that were never even on your radar, people showing up who amplify your calling, or circumstances that elevate your influence beyond measure. Heaven doesn't calculate restitution based on human standards. It calculates it according to what aligns destiny, corrects spiritual disturbance, and sets the world back on track. So your repayment is never random or merely generous. It is precise, calibrated, and exacting. It is designed to restore not only what was stolen from you, but also what your suffering unintentionally interrupted in the grand design. The universe, through heaven, owes you a correction, and it is delivered in a way that is far more meaningful and far-reaching than the initial loss ever allowed you to imagine. Your restoration is justice multiplied. Number 5. God will repay you with influence, not just things. God's repayment often doesn't come wrapped in cash, possessions, or things you can touch. Instead, it comes as influence, the kind that moves people, shifts situations, and creates opportunities that no amount of money or planning could ever buy. Influence is the currency of the chosen, and heaven specializes in distributing it to those who have endured, persisted, and remained faithful. It is a form of repayment that multiplies beyond what you thought was possible because it carries weight in every area of life. Influence is not about being famous or having followers. It's about authority and credibility that cannot be ignored. When God stamps your name with that kind of authority, doors begin to open in ways that are unexplainable by ordinary means. People who previously overlooked you start seeking your counsel. Opportunities appear without networking, and situations that once seemed impossible now bend toward you. Your presence alone becomes a signal that something significant is happening, and that is the power of influence as repayment. The beauty of this type of repayment is that it lasts. Money can be spent, possessions can be lost, and even relationships can falter. But influence, when granted by heaven, carries a permanence that outlives temporary circumstances. It shapes environments, alters outcomes, and extends your reach far beyond what you could achieve alone. Influence transforms your story from one of loss into a narrative of authority, where your voice matters and your decisions have impact. Influence is also deceptive in its simplicity. It looks ordinary to the casual observer, yet it is one of the most potent forms of wealth in existence. A single connection made through the credibility God gives you can change the course of your life, unlock doors, and accelerate destiny in ways that material gifts never could. When heaven repays through influence, it is investing in your capacity to multiply impact, not just accumulate comfort. This is why repayment sometimes doesn't feel tangible at first. You might not see stacks of cash or immediate rewards, but as influence grows around you, as people begin to recognize your authority and your life begins to carry weight in spheres you never expected, the true magnitude of heaven's repayment becomes undeniable. Influence is heaven's way of ensuring that what was lost is restored, and then some, on a scale far beyond personal gain. Number 6. Your repayment will arrive through the same eyes that saw your loss. Your repayment doesn't happen quietly or behind the scenes. Heaven has a way of making sure that those who witnessed your lowest moments, who laughed at your setbacks, ignored your potential, or even actively plotted against you, are fully aware when your time comes. God doesn't just restore you in private. He stages it in a way that unmistakably shows that what they tried to steal or destroy was never theirs to take. Your restoration becomes a visible announcement that the tides have shifted, and everyone who underestimated you gets to see the magnitude of what they missed. The people who mocked you were essentially spectators in a story they couldn't control. They measured your worth by their own understanding and tried to define your limits. Heaven doesn't repay behind a curtain because part of the divine correction is clarity. When repayment arrives, it's unmistakable and undeniable. Their judgment, their mockery, their disbelief, they all become a backdrop for your triumph. What they once saw as weakness is now evidence of strength. What they assumed would remain broken is now completely whole and moving in a direction they cannot stop. This principle also carries power beyond personal vindication. Your visible restoration sends a message that loss is never the final word. It proves that timing, endurance, and faith are more valuable than temporary advantage or human schemes. The very energy that others used against you becomes part of the stage for your repayment, amplifying the impact. Heaven doesn't just restore what was lost. It magnifies it in the presence of witnesses who tried to downplay your value. It's important to note that this isn't about revenge, it's about justice. God's repayment always carries a divine signature, and that signature is undeniable to those who watched and judged. When your repayment unfolds before their eyes, it becomes impossible for them to ignore the truth of your purpose and the reality of God's faithfulness. The very people who calculated your downfall are forced to acknowledge that their assumptions were wrong. Your restoration, seen by those who doubted you, transforms your journey into a testimony. Every closed door, every act of betrayal, every slight, these become the contrast that highlights your rise. Heaven ensures that your repayment is not only complete but witnessed, so that your story delivers both justice and inspiration, leaving no room for misunderstanding or denial. Number 7. Repayment isn't just for you. It rewrites generational narratives. Heaven's repayment is never limited to the individual. It carries a ripple effect that reaches far beyond your own life. The losses, pain, and setbacks you endured were never just personal. They often carried echoes of generational patterns that have held your family back for decades. Poverty, rejection, abuse, and failure can linger in bloodlines, not because of weakness, but because cycles repeat when there is no intervention. When God steps in to repay you, He doesn't only restore what was stolen from you personally. He breaks those chains and interrupts the cycle at its root. Your rise becomes a turning point for your entire lineage. The doors that open for you, the wisdom you gain, the opportunities that now come naturally, these are not just blessings for you. They are the inheritance that rewrites what your children, grandchildren, and even great-grandchildren will experience. Every advantage that heaven grants you carries a weight that transforms generational destiny. What once seemed impossible for your family line is suddenly within reach because the repayment extends beyond personal comfort. It changes trajectories. This principle explains why chosen ones often see breakthroughs that feel disproportionate to the effort or losses they personally endured. It's not just about what you survived or endured. It's about what heaven is doing through you to heal ancestral wounds and reset patterns that were meant to limit your family. The spiritual economy of repayment operates on a level that surpasses human understanding, ensuring that the victory is not temporary but lasting, affecting bloodlines for years to come. Moreover, this kind of repayment carries authority. When you rise and thrive, your very presence commands a shift in family culture. What was once accepted as limitation or inevitability is no longer tolerated. Your family witnesses proof that loss is not the end, that divine intervention can alter even the most entrenched patterns, and that generational curses can be replaced with generational favor. In essence, your restoration is bigger than you. It is both a shield and a pathway for those who come after you. The repayment you receive doesn't just repair the damage, it transforms it into a foundation for legacy. Heaven ensures that when you rise, your family rises with you, and what once was a cycle of lack becomes a cycle of abundant influence and opportunity. Your repayment carries generational weight, making you both a beneficiary and a pioneer of lasting change. Number 8. Repayment exposes false winners. When God repays you, it has a way of exposing the illusions of victory in the lives of those who try to celebrate your setbacks. People often cheer too early when they think they've outmaneuvered you or stolen your place. They may have believed that their schemes, betrayals, or opportunism gave them a permanent edge. But repayment doesn't just restore, it reveals the truth. What they held on to temporarily will appear insignificant, almost laughable, compared to the fullness of what God pours into your life. Their so-called win is exposed as fragile and fleeting, while your restoration arrives with weight, substance, and permanence that no one can dispute. Those who thought they were clever enough to capitalize on your losses will be forced to witness the magnitude of your repayment. Every attempt they made to block you, ignore you, or diminish your value becomes a stark contrast to the abundance you now command. Their small victories, built on temporary advantage, are dwarfed by heaven's generous restoration. They may have climbed a small ladder while you were down, but when your repayment comes, it becomes clear that the ladder they stood on barely reached the ground compared to the heights God has placed you on. This principle also underscores a spiritual truth. Temporary human gain is not true power. Many people celebrate what they think they've acquired at someone else's expense, never realizing that such gains are fragile and unsustainable. God's repayment, on the other hand, carries permanence. It doesn't just compensate, it elevates you in a way that cannot be taken or undermined by human hands. Those who mocked or doubted you suddenly find themselves looking at a reality they cannot alter, forced to acknowledge that their win was nothing more than a passing illusion. Repayment, in this sense, serves both justice and revelation. It restores what was taken from you, but it also clarifies who truly thrives in alignment with divine purpose. The banquet you are given is not just nourishment for your needs, it is evidence of God's discernment and timing, and it contrasts sharply with the crumbs left for those who attempted to celebrate your downfall. Their temporary advantage becomes a lesson. What is taken by cunning or deceit cannot endure against the weight of heaven's favor. Your repayment exposes false winners and elevates you in a league they can only observe. The lesson is simple but profound. Heaven's justice is thorough, visible, and undeniable, leaving no room for misjudgment or miscalculation. Number 9. Your losses were receipts for divine justice. Every loss you experienced was never random or meaningless. It was a record, a receipt filed in heaven's books. Every betrayal, every missed opportunity, every closed door, and every hardship was noted, not as punishment, but as evidence. Heaven keeps track of the ways your life was disrupted, and each record serves as proof that divine justice is owed. Your pain, disappointment, and endurance were never invisible. They were part of a ledger that cannot be ignored. Repayment is not just about blessing, it's about justice being fulfilled and truth being validated. When God restores what was taken, it is more than compensation. It is a declaration. Your suffering has been acknowledged, measured, and addressed. Those who wronged you, the forces that tried to derail you, and the circumstances that seemed permanent, now stand as witnesses to the fairness of divine intervention. Your restoration becomes the verdict not handed down by human courts or influenced by human opinion, but by heaven itself. Every tear shed, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt is now part of the case, and the judgment is irrevocable. This is why repayment often arrives in ways that are undeniable. It's designed to leave no question about the integrity of the process. Heaven ensures that the restoration is proportional to what was lost and multiplied by the endurance you displayed. The outcome is not just personal satisfaction. It's a public affirmation of divine justice. Those who watched, doubted, or participated in your trials will see that the ledger was never empty, and the justice owed was never delayed beyond perfect timing. Moreover, your losses as receipts serve as proof for others who face similar battles. They show that suffering is not overlooked, that injustice is not permanent, and that heaven's accounting system is flawless. Your story becomes a living testimony. Every setback was temporary, every betrayal recorded, and every repayment guaranteed. Your restoration is not just a gift, it is the execution of justice, the undeniable presentation of evidence, and the final verdict in your favor. Heaven does not forget, and it does not miscalculate. What was taken from you is returned, multiplied, and validated, proving that divine justice always prevails and that no loss goes unaccounted for. Number 10. Repayment is measured in timing, not just quantity. God's repayment is never about rushing or simply matching what was lost. It is about perfect timing. What he gives back is measured not only by quantity, but by the precise moment it will have the greatest effect. You might think that receiving sooner is better, but divine repayment works on a level that human impatience cannot grasp. Heaven waits until the circumstances are exactly right, until you are ready, until the impact will be unmistakable, and until the timing maximizes both restoration and purpose. This is why chosen ones often experience what seems like delayed blessings. It is not delay in neglect, but delay in strategy. God orchestrates repayment so that it arrives at a moment that will create a turning point in your life. Sometimes what you need most is not simply the restoration of what was lost, but the exact positioning, the perfect alignment, or the heightened awareness to use it fully. Timing ensures that the repayment is transformative, not just temporary. Heaven also considers the audience. The repayment often arrives when those who doubted, mocked, or underestimated you are least prepared to intervene or challenge it. This ensures the fullness of what is returned cannot be disputed or diminished. The impact is undeniable because it appears not only as restoration, but as a signal of authority, purpose, and divine orchestration. What others perceive as luck or coincidence is actually the meticulous timing of heaven's hand. Moreover, timing amplifies the multiplier effect of repayment. When what is returned coincides with the moment you are most prepared to use it, it multiplies beyond its original value. Opportunities, influence, favor, and blessings are most potent when received at the right moment. God does not just give back what was lost. He ensures it lands in a way that accelerates destiny, shifts narratives, and redefines possibilities. So repayment is never measured merely in what you get, it is measured in when it arrives. The right timing can turn small gifts into monumental breakthroughs, minor opportunities into life-changing platforms, and restored losses into unprecedented victories. Heaven's system is precise. The value of repayment is amplified by the moment it enters your life, making timing as critical, if not more critical, than the quantity itself. Number 11. Repayment requires the death of entitlement. Repayment from heaven doesn't come to those who approach life with a sense of entitlement. It requires humility, patience, and the willingness to surrender personal pride. Those who cling to bitterness, resentment, or the idea that they are owed something often block the very channels through which God wants to restore them. True repayment is not a transaction. It is a response to a heart that has proven capable of receiving divine favor with reverence and trust. When you release entitlement, you demonstrate that you value the giver more than the gift. This is crucial because blessings that arrive in hearts filled with arrogance or anger are rarely sustainable. God's repayment is designed not only to restore what was lost, but to elevate your spirit, align you with purpose, and confirm your readiness for greater responsibility. Humility signals that you can carry what is returned without corruption or misuse. Surrender proves that you understand your losses were never random, but were part of a larger plan you may not yet fully see. Bitterness, on the other hand, is like a barrier that deflects repayment. When your focus is on resentment, the energy that could attract restoration gets trapped in anger. By letting go, you open yourself to receive not just compensation, but transformation. Heaven rewards the spirit that continues to trust, continues to do right, and continues to move forward, despite injustice or pain. It's in those moments of letting go of what you think you deserve that you become eligible for the multiplied repayment that only God can provide. This principle also explains why repayment often exceeds expectations. God does not give out of obligation, but out of recognition for a heart that has been refined through loss, trial, and humility. Your willingness to surrender, your capacity to prioritize trust in the giver over personal grievance, unlocks a type of restoration that cannot be earned through entitlement or human effort alone. In essence, repayment requires the death of entitlement, because what God restores is never just about the material or immediate gain. It is about aligning you with purpose, character, and eternal impact. Humility is the key that opens the door. Surrender is the hand that receives the gift. Without it, even the greatest blessing can pass by unnoticed. But with it, repayment arrives multiplied, undeniable, and perfectly timed to elevate both your life and your legacy. Number 12. Your repayment will come in unfamiliar packaging. God's repayment rarely arrives in the form you expect. It doesn't knock politely at the door of familiarity or show up as the exact person or opportunity you lost. Instead, it comes in unfamiliar packaging, ways that challenge your expectations and push you beyond the limits of your old perspective. This is intentional. If repayment mirrored exactly what was taken, it would keep you tethered to the past. By presenting restoration in a new form, God ensures that you rise into a level you could not have reached by reclaiming what was lost. Unfamiliar packaging often appears as a new role, a responsibility you never anticipated, or a person who sees your worth when others couldn't. It may feel strange at first because your mind is wired to recognize the familiar, to equate restoration with replication. But divine repayment is about growth as much as restitution. It teaches that what was stolen from you was never meant to limit your expansion. It was meant to prepare you to handle something far greater. This type of repayment also tests your discernment. Not every opportunity that appears will be from God, and not every person who enters your life will carry the intended blessing. The unfamiliar nature of repayment demands that you remain connected to God, alert to His guidance, and patient enough to recognize His fingerprints in situations that may initially feel strange or uncomfortable. The beauty of this approach is that it stretches your faith and forces you to step into arenas you would never have entered otherwise. Furthermore, receiving repayment in unfamiliar packaging amplifies the impact. It often surprises both you and those who opposed you. The very elements of life that you thought had passed you by become vehicles of triumph in ways that are more expansive and long-lasting than simple restoration could provide. It highlights that God's economy is not limited to returning what was lost, but transforming it into something that advances your purpose. In the end, the unfamiliarness is part of the blessing. It ensures that repayment is not merely a return to where you were, but a push into a higher dimension, where your value, influence, and destiny are undeniable. What arrives may be unexpected, but it will always be perfectly suited to elevate you, redefine your life, and show that divine restoration cannot be measured by human standards alone. Number 13. Heaven's repayment isn't just restoration, it's overcompensation. Heaven's repayment doesn't just restore what was lost, it overcompensates. God doesn't simply put you back where you were before the loss occurred, He propels you far beyond it. The restoration you receive is designed not to fill a void, but to create a level of abundance, influence, and fulfillment that makes the original loss seem insignificant. What was taken from you becomes a prelude to a victory so expansive that you realize nothing stolen could ever measure up to what is now yours. This overcompensation is part of God's way of proving that He is not limited by human standards or timelines. While the world measures restitution in terms of equal exchange, heaven operates on exponential scales. Every tear, every setback, every moment of endurance contributes to a multiplier that transforms your repayment into something far greater than a mere replacement. Your losses were never meant to define you. They were meant to prepare you to receive more than you imagined. It also serves as a spiritual lesson. Loss is never the final word. Many people struggle to move past setbacks because they focus on getting back what was taken. Heaven teaches that the proper response to loss is patience, faith, and persistence, because what is coming is far larger than a simple return. The overcompensation ensures that you not only regain what was stolen, but also gain additional resources, wisdom, opportunities, or influence that permanently elevate your position. This approach transforms your perspective on hardship. When repayment arrives in this way, you recognize that the original loss was temporary, small, and even necessary. It was a setup for a gain that could never have been received without the experience of absence, the endurance through trial, and the patience cultivated in the process. What once felt like a setback becomes the launchpad for unprecedented expansion. In essence, God's repayment is designed to exceed expectation. It proves that divine restoration is not about balance or fairness by human standards. It is about abundance and elevation. You are not only restored, you are advanced, equipped, and positioned in ways that make your previous losses pale in comparison. What you gain is so significant that when you look back, you realize the loss was merely a small step toward the banquet heaven had prepared all along. Number 14. Repayment is a signal that your authority has shifted. Repayment from heaven is never just about comfort or compensation. It is a declaration that your authority has shifted. The losses, betrayals, and obstacles you endured were never meant to keep you down permanently. They were part of a process that prepared you to step into a realm where you are untouchable by the same forces that once sought to destroy you. When God restores, it is not only a matter of replacing what was taken. It is an elevation of your position, influence, and spiritual authority. Your repayment signals to the world, and to those who opposed you, that the playing field has changed. This shift in authority is visible in the way circumstances begin to respond differently around you. Doors that were once closed now open easily. People who ignored or opposed you start recognizing your value and influence. The very energy that tried to suppress you now moves in alignment with your destiny. Heaven's repayment makes it unmistakably clear that the forces which once had power over you no longer hold sway. You are operating in a level of protection, favor, and authority that cannot be undermined by previous adversities. Your repayment also serves as a message to others. It is proof that God's faithfulness is real and that He defends those He calls. The shift in authority is not only spiritual but practical. It changes the way your life is experienced by yourself and by others. The same challenges that once threatened your path now exist under a different framework, one where you are no longer vulnerable. Your rise becomes a statement. What tried to diminish you cannot touch you again, and what was meant to hold you back has now been transformed into a platform for influence and success. Moreover, this elevation cultivates confidence and discernment. When repayment arrives, you understand that your authority is no longer subject to human manipulation or attack. You begin to act with a level of assurance that comes from knowing that your position is divinely sanctioned and protected. Every step you take after repayment is a demonstration that your life operates under a new order, one in which you are firmly established and recognized. In the end, heaven's repayment is not just a gift, it is a proclamation. It declares that your season has changed, that your authority has shifted, and that you can no longer be reduced by the same circumstances or people that once tried. Your repayment is a signal to the world and to your enemies that you are now operating from a place of untouchable elevation, and your destiny can no longer be compromised. Every loss you endured, every tear you shed, every door that closed, and every betrayal you faced was never wasted. They were not random blows of fate, but carefully orchestrated pieces in a divine plan designed to prepare you for repayment on a scale beyond human comprehension. Heaven doesn't simply restore what was taken, it multiplies, elevates, and transforms it. Your suffering became an investment, your losses became receipts for justice, and your endurance became the proof that you were ready for something far greater than mere restoration. God's repayment is precise, powerful, and unmistakable. It comes not just as material gain, but as influence, authority, and opportunity, elements that reshape your life and redefine your purpose. It arrives in perfect timing, often in unfamiliar forms, and in ways that expose false winners while breaking generational patterns. What was lost becomes a launchpad for unimaginable expansion, and every act of divine restoration signals that your authority has shifted. You are no longer vulnerable to the same forces that once tried to diminish you. This is not simply a story of comeback, it is a story of transformation. Your repayment proves that what was taken could never compare to what heaven has prepared. It is a declaration to the world, a confirmation of God's faithfulness, and a living testimony that loss was never the end. When heaven repays, it doesn't just balance the scales, it overcompensates, it amplifies, and it positions you for a level of destiny that few can fathom. So rise with confidence. Every setback was a setup, every trial a training ground, and every loss a receipt for divine justice. Your life is now a reflection of restoration, multiplied blessings, and undeniable authority. The same world that counted you out will now witness the fullness of what was always yours to claim. Heaven has not only restored you, it has launched you. And from this point forward, your journey is untouchable, unstoppable, and unmistakably aligned with your divine purpose. Like, comment, and share this message to remind others that their losses are never the final word. And subscribe for more revelations that awaken the chosen within. Your repayment has begun, and it is beyond anything the world ever imagined. If this message resonated with you and awakened something deep within, make sure you don't miss what's coming next. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you're always first to receive these powerful revelations. Like this video to honor the truth it carries. Comment below and share your story of endurance and faith, and share it with others who need to hear that their losses are never the final word. Your engagement not only supports this channel, it spreads the message of hope, restoration, and divine repayment to everyone ready for their breakthrough. God bless you.